Hey viewer, this is your Royal Majesty, the CDI Queen. If you did not already know this, I'm a huge fan of soundtracks. Games, movies, shows. One of my favorite genres, if you can call it a genre, is the soundtrack. I think almost all of my reviews of CDI games include something positive about their music. But I wanted to go just a little bit further this time and talk about the 3 top composers found in the CDI world. Treat this like a primer on the subject, just to get your toes wet. I won't be getting into the biographical and discographical aspects of these people, but rather an introduction to their works as it applies to the CDI universe. The 3 composers I'm talking about are Jim Andron, Tony Trippi, and Stefan Pique. All 3 are totally unique and different from one another. The order I present them in is random and does not denote any kind of order or favorability. First, let's talk Jim Andron. If the name doesn't sound familiar, it should be. Jim Andron composed the soundtrack to the CDI's version of Tetris. Unlike the majority of its predecessors, which presented as the infamous pixelated puzzle game set to chiptune music, the CDI took a more unique approach. Throughout the 10 playable levels, the game screen itself appears standing in different nature scenes, with an eloquently arranged song by Jim Andron playing in the background. Hailed as the exact kind of music that Vaporwave was inspired by, the soundtrack has gained wider recognition within the last decade. A limited edition vinyl was released in 2020, but research shows that Mr. Andron may not have been behind this release. In 2022, however, he himself released a remastered version of several tracks, along with a few not yet heard. Sadly for me, my favorite track, Level 7, has not yet made the cut. We hope that Jim can release some more music for us soon, because I know I say as a fan, I'm willing to pay and I look forward to it. Next, we have Tony Trippi. Mr. Trippi actually composed soundtracks to 3 of my top favorite CDI games: Link the Faces of Evil, Zelda the Wand of Gamelon, and my all-time favorite, you guessed it, Laser Lords. Sometimes called the Synth Lord in YouTube comments, Tony's prolific work for the CDI has garnered significant amounts of praise over the years, and for very good reason. Many folks make statements along the lines of,
"This sounds like it belongs in a new f***ing Zelda game."
A shit game with some of the biggest jams ever.
Or, "The only thing about this game that doesn't suck." Those 2 Zelda games really have incredible music. They were released in the mid-90s, and Mr. Trippi's particular style encapsulates the deep 80s synth, complete with gritty beats, funky synth, and extremely catchy melodies. He also provided a wide variety of styles within those games, from the dark, iconic overworld theme for the Faces of Evil, to the more rustic and earthy vibe of the Wand of Gamelon, with all kinds of dark, epic, groovy beats in between. And then, of course, the Laser Lord soundtrack. Painfully brief at under 5 minutes for the entirety of its music, Laser Lords hosts little snippets of synth music when first arriving at different planets. I have to say, hands down, the best music I've ever heard. Not just in the CDI, but the best music I have ever heard. I've searched far and wide, to the darkest reaches of synthwave, to the most obscure soundtracks, and rarely do I find a similar sound. Paradise Warfare by Carpenter Brute hits the nail on the head nicely, as does Legend of Aces by Everdune. Check them in the description. I will put links for you. And what would a review of CDI music be without talking about Stefan Pique? Of course I mean the artist behind the legendary Lost Eden score. This game spans CDI and PC alike, but it really sparkled the best on the Philips console. I made a whole video recently that talked about Stefan Pique's 2024 remaster of the Lost Eden soundtrack, which you must simply check out and buy. To summarize, the soundtrack to Lost Eden gives us a beautiful, unique, multinational-inspired twist on light synth, tribal groove, and new age music. I can say with confidence that I have never found anything that sounds like the Lost Eden soundtrack. You may also recognize his music from the 1992 Dune game, not for CDI. Stefan definitely offers a unique style that could not have been better for Lost Eden, a game which follows a fantasy world where humans and dinosaurs live together, uniting for common causes despite conflict politically between the two. Stefan is active and claims to have more surprises for us at the end of 2024, so be sure to follow him on social media and support his new endeavors. Lastly, I want to have an honorable mention for the composer to Kether's soundtrack, Santiago J. Roux. Kind of a hard person to track down solid information on, sometimes goes by Santiago Jacques. A quick search will pull a couple of new age albums like Zephyr and Aztalca, to name just a few, but if you dig a bit deeper and you find an album called Ambient Music, Stress, Fear, and Anxiety, because that's what you want to listen to, you may recognize a few bits heard on Kether. I can't tell you how all this transpired, but I have always dug the music in the game Kether. The CDI was really amazing in that their games had so many wonderful soundtracks. It's interesting that a console that failed so terribly really holds some incredible gems. All of these soundtracks are worth listening to if you haven't heard them before, and if you have, I think it's time to revisit. So, which composer is your favorite? Is there a CDI game with an amazing soundtrack that I haven't uncovered yet? Share in the comments and let's keep listening. Be sure to check the description for links where you can support these amazing artists.